Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So I recently reported that jurors in the grand jury case regarding Breonna Taylor's murder had asked the judge to grant them permission to speak publicly. The jurors, in case you haven't been listening to the show and you're not aware, the jurors believe that the Republican Kentucky AG, Daniel Cameron, was being dishonest in his portrayal of how things went down in the grand jury case and how all police officers walked and faced no charges for murdering Taylor in her own home for no reason. Cameron, of course, is a Republican. He is very close to McConnell and Trump, and so that plays a role in this. Well, the judge has announced that the jurors can speak out publicly, but before the judge's decision even came out, yesterday, one of the jurors spoke to journalists. They've asked to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. They don't want to be targeted by anyone. But the juror said that the prosecutor failed to explain Kentucky's homicide laws or why they refused to prosecute the officers who killed Taylor. Attorney General Cameron's office only presented the jurors with one charge in which to decide upon, and that was whether the one officer was guilty of first-degree wanton endangerment, not for shooting at Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, but for placing the neighbors at risk. And that, of course, was what they ruled yes upon, and he was charged with that crime. The jurors said that the impaneled grand jurors, though, inquired about additional charges. They asked, are we going to see other charges? Are there going to be murder charges? Are the other officers facing anything? And they were told that the prosecutors, quote, didn't feel they could make them stick. The anonymous grand jury member also said, quote, the grand jury didn't agree that certain actions were justified, nor did it decide the wanton endangerment indictment should be the only charges in the Breonna Taylor case. The grand jury was not given the opportunity to deliberate on those charges and deliberated only on what was presented to them. So the reason these jurors wanted to speak out is because AG Cameron has told a very different story in press conferences. He has said that his office believed that the officers were justified in their shooting of Taylor because her boyfriend fired one shot at them, which is true. He also said that the grand jury agreed, and that is not true. Obviously, they couldn't agree if they weren't even asked the question. So he was giving the false impression that they were even given the chance to weigh in on the matter. And a George Washington University law professor named George Fairfax said that it was striking that prosecutors refused to answer grand jurors' questions regarding any additional charges. He said that prosecutors are required to be responsive to jurors' concerns and inquiries, and it raises questions about whether or not prosecutors made an honest effort to seek justice in this case. Yeah, I'd say so. He said, quote, if not, I think that there may be grounds for considering a new grand jury investigation with a different set of prosecutors. And so on that point, some people are calling for a special prosecutor to be assigned, someone who doesn't have a cozy relationship with the local police department and its officers. That's, happened before, because these guys work with them. They work on cases with the cops. Of course, they're going to treat them with kid gloves and treat them like little China dolls and not want to put them in harm's way. That's the way it goes. That's why we need changes to the way that they're investigated and prosecuted in this country. That is one major issue why cops are not held accountable for the crimes that they commit, because the prosecutors are friends with them. And certainly we need someone overseeing this case who isn't just trying to make protests and police shootings disappear for their party's president. Their party's president, Donald Trump, whose poll numbers tanked after his failed response and then his attacks on peaceful protesters after George Floyd's murder. I mean, it's clear. You look at his poll numbers and the way he handled it, though, especially what happened in Lafayette Square when he was shooting peaceful protesters with pepper balls and tear gas, and then it comes out that he wanted to use a heat ray on them. So of course, this guy, Cameron, he's a sleazebag. He's trying to make it all go away. He's trying to make this nice and quiet, protect the cops, protect his party. This needs to go to an outside prosecutor. And the biggest issue at hand in this case is whether or not police identified themselves. So that would be a critical point if they decided to bring charges against these cops, because it would remove the argument that Taylor's boyfriend fired at who he believed was a robber. So far, numerous witnesses say the cops did not identify themselves, and Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, maintains that he and Taylor did hear the knocking. They admit to hear the knocking, or he admits to hearing the knocking. And he said that they both yelled out numerous times asking, "Who is it?" But they received no answer. Witnesses, neighbors nearby, people who were walking through the complex say that they did not identify themselves, and also the cops were not in uniform. And they honestly had no reason to be at Taylor's apartment in the first place. So all of this stuff would be brought into the case, and jurors would look at it and say, okay, would she still be alive if they had identified themselves? If they had said, "Police, open the door," Kenneth Walker would not have shot his gun. He only shot because he thought that that the apartment was being broken into and that they were being robbed. If they had identified themselves, chances are Breonna Taylor would still be alive because they would have just opened the door. And the cops involved are still so tone deaf to what's going on in this country. They're still trying to make excuses for all of the deaths of unarmed Black people that continue to take place. And I say that because one of the officers involved, Jonathan Mattingly, he happens to be the one who got shot in the leg by Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. That was the only person who got shot, yet they fired like 30 some rounds. So Breonna Taylor's boyfriend fires one shot, they unload over 30 rounds. Excessive force? Anyone? So Mattingly, back to his BS, he gave a really extensive interview to ABC News. And in his interview, as part of it, he said, quote, "There's a reason the police were there that night. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, the only contact you'll probably ever have with the police is running into them in Thornton's, or if you get a speeding ticket. Other than that, unless you know them, you're not really dealing with the police." No, this is patently false. And especially when we can look at children who have been murdered, such as Tamir Rice, who literally was murdered within seconds of a cop pulling up in his car, who also, by the way, faced no charges. He took the life of a 12-year-old boy who was playing in the park with a toy gun with his friend. The cops are out of control. They face no consequences. So of course, they're trigger happy. They see a Black person and they just lose their shit. Tell me, what crime was Tamir Rice committing? What crime was he committing playing as a little boy in the park? And of course, he's not the only one that is victim to this. And this cop's response is just vomit-inducing. Whether or not you're a law-abiding citizen is irrelevant. There are plenty of people in this country who commit white-collar crimes all the time, and they've never been in fear of being shot by the police. We got one sitting in the damn White House right now who has committed I don't know how many crimes since he took office 4 years ago. Is he in fear of being shot? I mean, passing a phony $20 bill, as George Floyd was accused of doing, that does not warrant the death penalty. Selling cigarettes, because you need to make money, as Eric Garner was accused of doing. That does not warrant the death penalty. And who the hell appointed cops to be judge, jury, and executioner in this country? So, with all due respect, of which I have none, Sergeant Mattingly can shove his rationalization up his ignorant, white privileged male ass. I'm sorry, I have no tolerance for it anymore. Go peddle your BS somewhere else. I cannot believe that they gave him a platform to try to excuse putting tons of bullets into an innocent 26-year-old girl who was just trying to live her life. It's irresponsible. I'm sick of these cops getting away with their crimes because of qualified immunity BS that needs to be taken down. Sorry to rant, guys, but this stuff is just grating on my nerves. This stuff is boiling up. And, I don't condone violence, but how do people not become enraged when this stuff happens over and over and over again and nothing is done about it? They get away with it. Of course, people are going to lose their minds. As always, like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I will talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to Plants and Politics. The only way we can take our country and power back is to spread the truth and build an army. So remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again.